I'm Khunapong Khunaraksa, or you can call me Khun. I'm a water professional, Asia Pacific expert. I grew up in Sydney, Australia and Bangkok, Thailand. And I moved here to San Francisco 4 years ago in early 2015. Currently, I'm working at water.org as a portfolio manager. Water.org is a non-profit organization dedicated to solve the world water crisis through innovative financing approaches. I also volunteer at Upwardly Global, a non-profit organization assisting newcomers to the US to find jobs in their professional field. Thank you so much, Anuz and Dipika, for having me today on this At the End of the Day podcast.
Thank you so much, Khun, for this wonderful introduction. And how are you feeling today? By the way, how is the weather in California right now?
The weather is not that great. It's actually raining right now. I wish it's very sunny right now.
Okay, then I'm feeling good for myself then. The weather of California is not good. That makes me feel happy now. As a New Yorker.
Yes.
What does portfolio manager mean?
What I normally do is I provide advisory services to our local team and also our partner. I also manage the portfolio budget and to make sure our deliverables are met on time and we produce good results. But at the end of the day, for me as a portfolio manager, is to help people, right? That's the mission of water.org.
We were just looking through your profile on LinkedIn and we came to know that you have worked in several countries, and finally in the year 2015 you came in the United States, right?
Right.
And you found a job in the sector, in the water sector, in the same year, sometime in September.
Yeah, like within 7 months of coming to America.
Both Anuz and I are interested to know what exactly did you do from the moment you arrived in the US and before you found the job at water.org.
We are pretty lucky that when we moved here, my wife, she got a job right away. And secondly, we have some savings. And as I mentioned, I moved. This is not my first time, but why it's different from why this move is different is because I had no US work experience and education, and I had this story thinking that it would be impossible to get a job without them. But fortunately, I found out that it's not true. It's not the case at all. So that's a little bit about the background about myself. And just when we first arrived, during the first month was actually for us to get settled down and find an apartment. So it was actually in March 2015 when I started looking for job opportunities. And I applied for the job at water.org in May 2015, and I started working with them in September 2015. And it sounds like it's quite easy for me, but actually it's not. It came with challenges, although my wife, she got a job right before we moved. Is that our first apartment was so small, it was like 400 square feet. And, I had to sit in the living room, and my wife, she works from home, and I look at her every day working. That was really, really tough for me. So I knew that I had to think differently, and I had to find new ways of doing things. That being said, I had a coach throughout the entire process, even before I moved. And I can give you a little bit more in detail what I actually did. I would describe it in five categories. The first one is, as I mentioned, I had a coach, and my coach, he's American, and he used to live here for 30 years, and he also lived in Thailand as well. So he understands two cities very well, and by having him to bounce off my idea and talk to when I'm not sure about something, it was really helpful. So that's the first thing.
Okay, Khun, I just want to interrupt you there. So how did you find your coach or mentor? Like, who got you connected with him?
So I found my coach through my wife, actually, my wife, Kim. So she know, his name is Howard. They knew each other in Thailand, and I was introduced to him. So that's how I kind of know him. And after he told me about his story, that's why I was like, okay, I need to work with you. The second one is I started working out of coffee shops. It sounds really interesting, but for me, to be honest, it's so simple for me because, you know, looking at my wife working in the living room every day, getting out of that environment was really important for me. So I started looking for coffee shops around my apartment and then went there and worked out of that. And in fact, Anush, is that I got the interview email from water.org when it was at Starbucks. So just imagine that. Coffee shop might bring you luck as well. And if you ask me if I can do it again, I would maybe go to like co-working space. Back then, I didn't really know about co-working space, and nowadays there are co-working space everywhere. And I think it could be a good starting point for anyone that is listening, is that co-working space is not only a place for you to work or do activities, but also you can make network there, you know, build communities and get to know people. So that's kind of the second thing that I did. And then thirdly is I went to Upwardly Global and JBS, and particularly Upwardly Global. I learned so much from them in depth about US working culture. And for me, cultural sensitivity is really important.
And Khun, when you mentioned cultural sensitivity, what do you mean by that?
I grew up in Sydney, right? So it's kind of a Western country, and here it's a Western country. But when you talk about, let's say, at work in Southeast Asia, when you're in a meeting room, you are normally people will be quiet, but here it's completely different, right? So you have to acknowledge the culture here, the working culture here. People expect you to express your thoughts and start having conversation or discussion. So when I say cultural sensitivity is to recognize what is important for that particular country or city and try to really adjust yourself and blend into that. I would like to say one thing is, for me, coming to the US, you really need to be open-minded and be willing to change to make things work. The fourth one is going to networking events. And I went to so many networking events at the peak of 3 to 4 networking events per week. And I met some interesting people, but to be honest with you, some of them I left after 5 or 10 minutes. It just was not a good fit for me. And what I learned from this experience of going to so many networking events is that you really need to identify specific events that really related to you. And by doing that, it will increase the possibility of you meeting like-minded individuals in the same sector. And for these networking events, Anush, I think you could relate it to me. When I moved here, I had no connections with professionals in my industry. And I had to start building that from scratch, actually. And some of the people I met at these networking events became good friends of mine now. And I think the last thing about networking events is that it will help you feel comfortable talking to strangers. And that's what you really want to have when you go for job interviews, right? So you want to be really confident. You want to be really calm when you talk to strangers. Let's say, imagine the interview panel is sitting in front of you, so you just can practice practice.
How do you find those networking opportunities?
I found it through Meetup group, Meetup, the website, and also Eventbrite as well, Facebook, Google. Just go online and type in let's say for example, I'm a water professional, I would type in water networking events or environmental events, and then I just went there. My last point here is I went to a Thai temple, and I went to this temple called Wat San Fran in San Francisco. And the reason why I went there is because the job search process could be challenging sometimes. And to be honest, I feel down sometimes. So I went there to kind of make me feel motivated again. And it's about mentality, you want to feel motivated most of the time throughout the process. And I was a monk for 3 times, so I know this works for me.
Khun, thank you so much for bringing up the part about going to temple. Yes, actually, it really helps going, when you are feeling low and demotivated, going to a place where you have faith in someone or in superpower, it actually really relieves you.
Correct. And just want to add a little bit on, going to temple or demotivation. You really need to find a way for you to break that cycle, throughout the process is challenging. And for me, again, it's not about applying for hundreds of jobs. It's to find a job that fits you very well and spend the time to tailor your application, make the best application you could do. And for me, after I did this realization of, doing something new, find new strategy, I actually applied for 2 jobs, and one of them was water.org job. And I got it. And you just have to be motivated most of the time.
And Khun, we're at the end of the podcast, and is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
If you have further questions, feel free to email me at any time at khunapong@gmail.com, khunapong@gmail.com.
Those of our audience who would like to get in touch with Khun, when you email him or send a message on LinkedIn, please make sure to mention podcast at the end of the day in the subject line, so that way Khun would understand that, okay, this email is coming from an audience of the podcast at the end of the day. And Khun, please convey both of our special thanks to Kim for helping us technically to record the podcast on your end. Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
And please do subscribe to our channel at the end of the day, and do visit our website, that is podcast@theendoftheday.com. And please, feel free to reach out to our guest. The email address is right in their description.
Thank you so much for tuning to our podcast. Until next week.
Bye-bye.
Hey guys, a quick note. If you have a personal story that you think might be helpful to the newly arriving immigrants in the US, please contact us. We would love to feature you in our podcast. Go to our website, podcast@theendoftheday.com, and write to us by going to the feedback section.
And by the way, if you love this podcast, you can support us with a small donation. Your help will enable us to continue producing more episodes. The link to support our podcast is in the description below.